Dear listeners, welcome to 左建园, Garden of Humble Views. First of all, I really want to apologize for the long time delay. It has been more than 2 months since my last episode, and I really feel ashamed as a content creator for not updating my channel for this long. And still, you guys keep following me, keep following my channel. I really appreciate and feel very thankful. But I have to admit, being consistent has always been the biggest challenge for a content creator, and this is also the reason why my previous content creating project all failed. But this time, I will try my best to keep updating contents in this channel and keep our garden alive. So without further delay, let's start today's story. Episode 5, Trouble Next Door, the Beijing-Tokyo Friction. As you can see from the title, you may already have idea that today I'm going to talk about something a little bit intense and a little bit heavy, something related to geopolitics. This is the first time I talk about geopolitics in my channel, and it probably won't be the last time. But instead of focusing on grand narratives, the government decisions, and the diplomatic dispute, I would also like to focusing a bit more on something different, about how society and the people in China react and perceive to this issue, what are the history behind, and what is my opinion and my personal position. Because in the end, my channel is not political commentary program like a BBC or CNN. It's an individual channel trying to offer my personal opinion and positions. As I introduced in the first episode, it's a garden where I share my humble views. I don't know if you've been following the news in the last month in Asia, and in the last month, the biggest news in Asia is definitely the political dispute between China and Japan, and all this tension started with a dangerous statement of the current Japanese Prime Minister Takaichi Sanae. On the 7th of November, the Japanese Prime Minister Takaichi was questioned by an opposition lawmaker at the parliament, asking in what circumstance surrounding Taiwan could count as a survival-threatening situation for Japan. And Takaichi responds like this, now I'm quoting her, saying that if there are battleships and they use a force, no matter how you think about it, it could constitute a survival-threatening situation. Of course, she replied in Japanese in the parliament. So the quote I'm using is an English translation from BBC, so you can easily find the source, which means I'm not inventing it at all. The surviving situation she mentioned in her statement is actually a legal term under the 2015 Japan's security law. It refers to a situation where an armed force attacked Japan's ally and posed threats to Japan's existence. In such a situation, Japan's self-defense force can be activated and respond to the threats, meaning that Japan can deploy troops and engage in military interventions overseas. As you can imagine, this dangerous and controversial statement definitely makes Beijing extremely furious, as China has long perceived Taiwan as a domestic issue. Takaichi's statement was basically saying that Japan may intervene in China's internal affairs in a military way, and this is totally against the joint statement between China and Japan when two countries normalized their diplomatic relation in the 70s. And of course, such statement makes Beijing very unhappy, and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs has made several public statements strongly protest against Takaichi, asking her to retract her statement. This issue has escalated so fast and even reached the top level of the leadership, as multiple media reported that the Chinese president actually called the president of the United States, complaining to the US and asking US to make Japan behave properly. Coincidentally, right after the call between the China and the US leaders, the US president made a phone call with the Japanese Prime Minister. Even though in the official record they didn't say anything that what topic they discussed, but according to some Japanese media report, the US president actually warned Takaichi to stay away from the issue of Taiwan because he wants to repair the relationship with China. All this diplomatic pressure from China is basically asking the Japanese Prime Minister to retract her statement, but until today, she didn't do anything. Even though she has made several statements after saying that China is an important neighbor of Japan, and Japan's position on Taiwan has never changed, but the retraction China was expecting never happened yet. Besides the super intense diplomatic back and forth, the influence of the geopolitical tension between China and Japan has started to influence normal people's life. Right after the statement of Takaichi, the Chinese Minister of Foreign Affairs has made a statement warning Chinese citizens to be careful and cautious when they choosing Japan as a travel destination, saying that Japan has some safety issue and there are some far-right extreme groups attacking Chinese in Japan. Following this, many travel agencies has cancelled their travel group to Japan. Flight companies also cancelled many flights to Japan. The result have reflected in the Japan stock market, and the retail and tourism stock dropped really a lot in that week. Besides the influence on tourism, many Japan-related cultural activities were also cancelled or suspended. For example, that week was also the first week the Demon Slayer movie started to broadcasting in China. After the incident, the public screening of the Demon Slayer movie was suspended, and the multiple Japanese movies which were originally scheduled to release later were also cancelled. Besides that, multiple concerts by Japanese singers were also influenced, and the most symbolic one must be the concert of Hamasaki Ayumi in Shanghai. The audience were just informed one day before the opening of the concert, and the whole team was already in Shanghai with all the equipment and the stage set up. So in the end, Ayumi decided to do the concert alone in the empty stadium. This was a very big thing on social media, and the picture of her performing alone in the empty stadium went viral on social media, particularly among her fans. Hamasaki Ayumi is the best-selling solo artist in Japan and a cultural icon of the last 2 decades. Ironically, she used to be the leading performer in the China-Japan Friendship Gala in 2002, in the occasion for the 30th year anniversary of the normalization of the diplomatic relation between China and Japan. She is such an iconic and important figure, bringing friendship and cultural exchange between China and Japan. And 20 years later, her concert in Shanghai got cancelled because of the political tension. On this weekend, there will be a very large comic event in Hangzhou, Comic Up 32, which is the biggest convention that is focusing on fan work. So basically, people create their own artwork or their own stories based on existing works. However, the participants were informed that any elements related to Japan is prohibited in the event. So many of the content creators whose work are built based on Japanese manga, anime, and games or movies have to change their plan or quit the event completely. Even though there is no official statement from the government saying that all Japan-related cultural activities should be cancelled or suspended, we can still see there is an invisible hand behind this. To be honest, I feel this is just a cheap way to play with nationalism, to trigger people's emotion and anger, and also shift their attention away from other important domestic issues such as unemployment, slowing down economy, and social problems. But Beijing is not the only one playing this. Japan is also playing the same game of nationalism and populism. Japanese Prime Minister Takaichi Sanae is from the Liberal Democratic Party of Japan, which is the party that dominates the political arena of the country for decades. If someone managed to get elected as the president of the party, the likelihood of becoming the next Japanese Prime Minister is very high. So when she got elected as the president, people were expecting her to become the first female Prime Minister. However, the longtime collaborator of the Liberal Democratic Party refused to form a government together because of the financial scandal and, more importantly, the extreme far-right position of Takaichi. Because the Liberal Democratic Party failed to win the majority in the parliament, so in the end, they have to collaborate with someone to form a government. So they chose to collaborate with a far-right party which is known for their anti-China position. Therefore, her very strong statement against China somehow is also to please the voters from the far-right group. But there's a deeper reason behind this, because she wants to make Japan, quote, quote, a normal country again in terms of military, and to break the chain of the peace constitution. Because Japan was defeated in the Second World War, and their constitution, which is known as the peace constitution, forbid the government from deploying military forces and engage in military activities abroad. By increasing attention with Beijing, Tokyo has a chance to relaunch its military plan and increase its budget for the army. Some right-wing politicians even started to discuss about the possibilities to abandon the three non-nuclear principles. These three principles are no possess, no manufacture, and no deploy. And what now they are discussing is that to introduce nuclear weapons of the United States to Japan in order to face the increasing threats from China. From all these political tensions, people may say that Beijing got so furious this time is because the statement is about Taiwan. But actually, the reason is more complicated than that. It is also about the dangerous tendency of the growing extreme far-right political power in Japan and the revival of the militarism. In that statement, Takaichi she used the term survival-threatening situation, which is a legal term introduced in the 2015 National Security Law of Japan. But actually, this term has also been used as an excuse in the history when the Imperial Japan invaded many Asian countries. The militarism government at that time claimed that Japan is an island country and its development is limited by the scarcity of resources and limited land. So for the future of the country and their people, it's needed to expand for larger territory and for more resources. Using the survival-threatening situation as an excuse, they colonized the Korean Peninsula and northeast China and launched large-scale military invasion towards other parts of China and Southeast Asia. The crime of the Japanese militarism in Asia caused immense suffering to the peoples of Asia. But this history is definitely overlooked in the Western world, and the awareness of people, particularly young people, is shockingly low in Europe. I remember once we were having lunch in our campus, and there was a guy near our table making a phone call wearing a black t-shirt. On the t-shirt is the famous Japanese painting The Great Wave of Kanagawa. I believe we all know about this painting by Hokusai, and this is one of the most famous one illustrating Japanese landscape and has a huge influence on the development of art in Europe. In the original painting, the background of the Great Wave was left empty, while on that t-shirt, the background was the pattern from the Rising Sun flag. Clearly, this guy has no idea about the meaning of that flag. He just went to the shop and saw this nice t-shirt with this beautiful Hokusai painting featuring this cool Japanese Rising Sun pattern at the background, without knowing the brutal history associated with this flag. The Rising Sun flag is definitely not a cool culture symbol of Japan. It's a symbol of imperialism, militarism, and colonialism of Japan. Under that flag, Japan invaded multiple countries in Asia. The war crime they committed caused huge damage to the people across Asia, and this is a history we should never forget. The following up of the story is that my friend kindly helped me to talk with that guy, and I told him about the meaning of that t-shirt, saying that maybe he wore that t-shirt unintentionally, but it's important at least have some awareness about what he is wearing. People can always argue that the story I'm sharing now is just maybe an individual case, but I believe many young people in Europe just have no idea about this history, thanks to their long-time Eurocentric worldview. And the United States definitely played a very negative role in this, as usual. Another important reason is that Japanese culture is very popular around the world, making people tend to beautify and romanticize everything about Japan. People in the West only see a cool Japan today, but what they don't see is a cruel Japan in the history. But I still want to emphasize the reason to record this episode. It's not about to launch an anti-Japanese campaign. It's more about raising awareness and let people know about the history, so we don't repeat the same mistake. In fact, me myself, I'm a big fan of Japanese culture. I love Japanese manga, anime, video games. I like Japanese food. I like Japanese cities, their cultural heritage, their nature, and the landscape. I've been to Japan once, and I would like to visit again in the future. I even spent one semester to learn Japanese language. But as a Chinese, also as a peace lover, what is important for us is to never forget the history, always fight against the militarism and the fascist, and always treasure the peace we have today. Another important lesson we learned from this is that whenever we see such play of nationalism and populism, we should always have our eyes wide open and avoid falling into the trap. To end today's episode, here I want to share a quote from Chairman Mao, one of the most famous communist leaders of China. He said this in 1940s at the opening ceremony of a school for war prisoners from Japan. He said that the Chinese and Japanese people stand together. We share one enemy, that is the Japanese militarism and the Chinese national traitors. In that situation, the term Chinese national traitor was used to refer to people who helped the Japanese army to harm Chinese people. As I said before, the purpose of this episode is not to spread hate, it's more about raising awareness. To be honest, maybe today is not the perfect time to talk about this heavy topic, since we are celebrating holiday season. But I have it planned since November, and I don't want to further postpone it. But on the other hand, it might be also a good occasion to talk about this heavy topic, to talk about history, to remind us to treasure the peace we have today. This is today's episode. Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays. Thank you for listening. I'm Fei Ran. See you next time in 卓见园, Garden of Humble Views.